Ladies and gentlemen, fellow noobs, welcome to this cast here on the Asher GG channel, and today we are looking at a game of Azir Pins facing off against a Yasuo here on the Korean Grandmaster. And this is going to be a very special cast because this cast is going to be a noobs edition of the cast. So we will be going through the most basic that I can do here about the mid lane, as we have a little bit of a fight level 1. So as a beginner player, one of the most important things to consider is that Azir is a very steep champion and he's probably going to teach you some pretty bad habits. So it is worth the consideration to pick up Orianna if that is your style of champion. Talking about Azir. Orianna is a very, very smooth transition. Try to hit platinum with that and then go back onto a lower elo account and play Azir on there. But nonetheless, we shall continue and I will explain to you how to play mid lane in a very, very basic sense. So mid lane obviously is the middle of the map, so it has a lot of influences that will come to it. And so generally as a mid laner, you want your minimap to be as big as possible. You can change that in the settings under interface. And you want to get the habit of every single time that you kill one of these minions, which is going to be your gold income. Every time you kill one of these minions, you look at the minimap real quick. And we will talk about how to get yourself a little bit more vision than you will currently have whenever the time arises. So talking about arising, what are Azir's abilities? Azir's abilities, his W ability, or secondary ability as I will call it, allows you to place a sand soldier, and that soldier basically gives you the ability to add a lot more range to your other abilities, and it enables some abilities. So you will only be able to level that W, and it basically enables everything. His kit is basically the idea of the emperor who plays through his minions. However, these soldiers are not attackable. Very, very complicated concept here actually to explain, but what he did here is called a level advantaged fight. So he knew he was going to be able to hit level 3 over the enemy, and levels early on are vital. The first 3 levels are the most impacting, but after that they still are quite impacting, and then level 6 and level 11 are going to be very huge power spikes, level 9 as well, as that will mark the point where you have your primary damage spell, which is his Q, leveled up. Now his Q gives you the ability to reposition your sand soldier and it slows. So what you do is for optimal combos here, you place your W, you auto attack the enemy. Auto attacks obviously are make your soldiers attack if the soldiers are in your attack range. So you do that, and then you Q to slow the enemy, and then you can reposition him again and kind of attack further. So the optimal combo would be W auto attack, Q instantly as quickly as you can after that auto attack, and then another auto attack, and that will usually win you the most of the trades. Now, you saw there as Azir, if someone jumps onto you, which a lot of people will, and especially champions like this Yasuo will, you do have a lot of tools to still deal damage, and you can't be too scared. And we're going to be talking about builds here as well. For runes, there are basically 2 runes. There are much more runes. Azir is one of the most complicated champions in that as well, but I would say that there are basically two types of setup, right? One which knows that people will get on top of you and force you to fight, so it maximizes damage. That is Conqueror. And then the build that gives you the ability to poke enemies. And poking means that you can deal damage without the enemy having the ability to retaliate. So here you saw, by the way, Azir E come in. Azir E allows him to shift to one of the soldiers and if then there's an enemy between him and his soldier, he will collide with that enemy and gain a shield. It used to be that he would stun. It also used to be that he had to collide and gain a shield. I think now he gains a small shield one way or another, and then a bigger shield if he collides. But basically, your E is your safety tool, and it will allow you to deal with enemies that jump on top of you. Now, it also does another thing, and that is it gives you another charge of your Zen soldier if you collide with an enemy. So if you have something like this Yasuo who jumps on top of you, you definitely want to dash into him with that E. Not always, but if you think you can win the trade, dash into him, and then you get the ability to place another Zen soldier, and that will allow you to get your W's passive. You're already seeing why I told you to play Orianna, by the way. That will give you the passive, which means that after 3 Zen soldiers are placed, Azir will gain a little bit of attack speed, which gives him the ability to perform auto attacks quicker. As Yasuo is going to pick up a kill, we are going to pick up not a kill onto Karthus here. Very clutch, well played by Karthus. A lot of strength in that kid. And yeah, we have an absolutely mad game here. Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to kind of keep up with this as Azir buys Lost Chapter. Lost Chapter, what it does is... oh, actually. Okay, so Lost Chapter will give you mana, and every time you level up, it refills your mana. So basically, that is your beloved item. You always want that item, want to get that item pretty quickly. Dark Seal, also really good item on AP mages in general. So, here's the thing, right? What he just did there, what you saw, I'm actually going to go back and explain it to you real quick here. So here, you didn't see the animation, but he was teleporting down to the turret. And now he placed the soldier, and he used his E. But while he was in his E, a short second before he was about to get to the soldier, at which he would stop, he used the Q to reposition the soldier and to kind of give him an extra little bit of distance that he would follow the soldier. And then here you see the barrier coming in. That the shield that is created upon landing on the soldier. So something that you definitely want to go into the practice tool and practice is a very, very strong ability and makes Azir so incredibly safe. In addition, obviously, to his ability to create a lot of range. Again, Azir, very complicated champion, so we will break it down as simply as possible, but there will always be the asterisk of he is very complicated. So, you know, it is advised that you spend some more time on other champions. It is very important on these mages like Azir as well to keep high creep score numbers. Now, these are achieved by killing these minions because in League of Legends in general, the rule is if you get the last hit on a unit, that means that you will receive the gold for it. And so creep score indicates how many of these little buggers you landed last hits on. And that is vital on champions like him, as he does do very well. Does do very well with things like the... Oh, as Azir comes in with the flash, but this is probably not going to be a kill here. Yeah. So, Azir is looking mighty fine. Very strong. He has acquired 2 Dark Seal stacks so far, so nothing to write home about, but it is a little bit of value added on top of the value of getting the kills and stuff. Now, his jungler is not doing so fine. Generally, all of his other lanes not doing so hot, but the Mister is doing very, very well indeed. So we'll see how exactly he manages to play this. Now, Azir, one important thing about Azir is that he has a lot of wave control. Now, what exactly is wave control? Wave control is the ability to impact the movement of the minions. And you usually do that by hurting certain different kinds of minions. So, for example, if you want a wave moving faster into the enemy, you kill the frontline minions. If you want the wave to be moving slower, you kill the backline minions. And dependent on positioning and situations. So here what occurred is actually a quite favorable situation for the Yasuo player. So Yasuo is this champion with a katana. And what he does here is he stacks up this huge wave, right? And this huge wave is a lot of potential gold that our Azir player is going to receive in a bit. So what Azir should do is he should stay further back to risk losing this minion. So what this player does is he actually does exactly that. He trades a kill, so he knows that he is going to die here as well, probably. However, he doesn't really care about that because he dies, and all of these minions that you saw here are going to die to the turret and not to Azir. Cheating Azir out of these minions. Right? So very, very simple concept, but very, very complex implications here. This is a very, very high elo match, so you will see a lot of high elo concepts here. And we see him pick up an item that is called Crown of the Shattered Queen. Now, Crown of the Shattered Queen is a little bit of a difficult item on Azir because it can be really, really good. However, the problem is that it reduces the amount of damage you deal, as well as reducing the amount of damage an enemy deals, which, depending on the situation, is either valuable or not so much. It's a little difficult to tell if it is a useless item, but you should generally, the concept should be stay away from Crown of the Shattered Queen and kind of stay on path for damage items if possible. Now, there are some champions that are not able to destroy this shield, as this shield will basically dissipate upon the champion being hit once, and it just removes the first damage that will hit the champion. However, after that, it disappears. Now, what you saw here is he placed a control ward. That ward grants True Sight has 4 HP, so 4 attacks of an enemy will destroy it, and it is permanently visible for the enemy. So he places this inside of a bush, which obviously bushes grant any unit that is inside of them invisibility as long as the enemy is outside of the bush. But as long as they're inside of the bush, they will be able to see it. Now it gives him a little bit of safety here against some of the situations that can occur in these matches, right, where enemies can try to create an advantage scenario for themselves. So we will see how exactly that is going to be working out, as Azir is going to go for a kill here. Messes up a little bit, but he will get out, and the Karthus did flash, but he will survive, unfortunately. Playing that very, very well though, like micro-wipes, so definitely a scary situation to be in here as the Azir, especially as he bought an item that will give him a little bit of safety, which is absolutely great. However, he did nerf himself as well, and the rest of his team is quite weak. So the question is it going to be worth it to have this item? And we will see over the course of the game whether or not it is going to be worth it. I will kind of always try to touch on this as we go through the match, so we'll figure it out. So one thing that you see here is that the enemy bot lane, they decided to go into the mid lane. And this is what usually happens, is that at a certain point in the game, the bot lane and mid lane switch positions. And that is because two people, the bot lane has 2 people obviously on it, right? One supporter, which doesn't take farm, and one AD carry who does take farm. The bot lane has much more control over the mid lane, as it is 2 people, and having 2 people in the middle of the map can be much more valuable because they can go everywhere, right? They can go into the middle, into the top lane, into the bot lane at once and create a 2-man advantage versus like we have here with Azir. He would, well, only create a 1-man advantage if he were to move from the mid lane. Now, Azir, definitely one of these champions that is more comfortable in a lane like the middle lane, but still, it is something that I would understand the enemy, the allied AD carry, so the Tristana, to resent Azir for a little bit, as it is very unsafe for her to be on the side lane, and Azir could be on the side lane and be much safer because of that combo that I told you about. The one where you place your second ability, then jump to it using your third ability, and extend the range by repositioning your soldier, so your second ability, by using your first ability. So a little bit difficult, but it is the nature of Azir. Now, another thing is that obviously in this situation, what will happen is that level-wise, you will see this Azir player. He will either fall behind because the support or someone else is there to balance out that person advantage, right, from the bot lane moving in to the middle of the map, or you will see him having a little bit of a fight with the enemy bot lane in the middle and slowly lose out on control. So both of these things can happen. What we see right now is that he is losing out on control just a little bit, but it seems so far to be working out as his AD carry is picking up a kill, and he's going to be teleporting down into the bottom lane. He picks up a Verdant Barrier, very passive Azir playstyle so far, but that teleport was enough to deter the enemies from helping their Yasuo. And so a advantage is generated by the red team, and now both of the turrets are going down. And Azir is going to walk into the mid lane, picking up more money and more creep score. So one thing that you always want to kind of look at with champions is not how much they've died, but mainly how much kills they have and then how much money they have. And that is the creep score, right? So 120 plus 5 kills. That is how much money they have in their bank. There are a couple more things to be considered, as unfortunately, beautifully played by the enemy supporter, who is actually putting on quite the freak show here, performing very well. Azir goes down once again, and you can just tell he's missing a lot of damage. Now, he bought a defensive item. Verdant Barrier builds into one item only, and it is going to give him even more defensive power, which makes him rely on to his teammates even a little bit more than before. And now we see him finally move into the bottom lane here, as on the right side we see a little bit of a overview of the creep score. Obviously, the side laners, so the top laners, are usually leading that, with the mid laner close in second, and then obviously, like, level wise at least, and the bot laner is always picking up a lot of money as well. The higher elo you go, the more the bot laner picks up, because people actively try to play resources into his hands, right? So the bottom laner slash AD carry, the higher you go in the skill levels, the more people will try to play into his hands more gold. As usually, as a little bit of a rule of thumb, you will be quite more efficient as a bot laner with any gold that is spent than any other champion, just because you have just because you gain the most out of items usually. However, we can't forget that Azir is also a champion that can gain a lot of value from items, probably one of the strongest ones in the middle lane. So definitely worth it to grab a lot of resources on him as well. A little bit difficult to explain this concept, but basically is that if you found mages, they usually scale with ability power, and AD carries, they scale with attack damage, attack speed, and critical strike chance. So that is quite a bit more to be scaling with, and so over the time that makes them come out ahead. However, Azir is a little bit different, as his soldiers attack as quickly as he attacks, so attack speed is quite good. Now, stacking 2 barriers on top of each other is kind of a questionable decision, in my humble opinion. I didn't even know that these items weren't mutually exclusive, but this item build that we see here, played on Azir, is a very, very defensive one, and I would not recommend you to play it at all. Now, he is going to be moving into the side lane again, and you will see that a lot of this gameplay is not super hype at this point of the game, as basically what you want to do is you want to make it so the minions that you see on your screen that are currently red run into the enemy turret, right? And they die to the turret, thus creating an advantage. As the enemy is mid lane and sieging the mid lane, and they have taken the turret down of their base, so they have opened up the base, and Azir isn't really doing a lot about it. He's kind of just figuring out what he can do here, and he just tries to pick up some extra gold. 126 gold is quite valuable into his pocket, as he's going to be teleporting to a little bit of a skirmish here, going to be throwing the Ashe, which is the AD carry, into his team using Emperor's Divide, an ability that is quite recognizable. It is a shield wall that Azir casts. It starts a little bit behind him, and it is able to move enemies into the direction that he casts it into, dealing damage to them as well. And he used that to pick up a kill on actually not the AD carry, although the champion is an AD carry. What is he doing? But rather is the support. So little bit curious of him to use teleport and his ultimate for not much of an advantage, but I think he was hoping to get a little bit more there. But this is basically your loop though, is you want to try to push in these waves, right? Send these waves into the enemy team, and then you should be able to gain the ability to join up with teamfights, thus again creating a man advantage. So just something that you want to keep in mind is that League of Legends is a game about man advantages. So obviously there are a lot of important concepts, but creating man advantages is one of the most important concepts in the game. One of the focal points of this video game, as a lot of the time it comes down to the fact that more stuff just beats less stuff. As Azir is going to be taken down here together with his team. The enemy team will take down one of the big raid bosses. This one is a worm called Baron Nashor. Actually is the inverted name of Roshan, which is from Dota 2, the game that League of Legends was copied from, believe it or not. Believe it or not, I say that because League of Legends often feels a little bit more polished than Dota. Except one thing, and that is the frickin' client. So the thing that you start your games in and stuff is not the most optimal in comparison to what Dota has. But the game itself, a lot of the time, just feels a little bit cleaner. Alright, as Azir is going to move down to the second raid boss type enemy, which is a dragon here. This one is an elemental dragon called the Cloud Soul, or also often called the Clown Soul, just because of its low apparent value that it grants. But basically these elemental dragons, they give you, dependent on the element, they give you some benefits, and the Cloud Dragon doesn't really give you a lot of damage, or doesn't really do anything crazy for you, but it still isn't a, you know, something that you can ignore, and so losing it does hurt a little bit. Now, for each team that amasses 4 of these elemental dragons, a elemental soul will be applied, and that soul gives a very strong version of that exact same buff we were talking about. So for Infernal, that would be just a damage buff on first hit. This is cooldown reduction and movement speed after casting your ultimate, as Azir is going to be taken down, and this is going to probably be a rip for the red side team. Very well done here by the enemy team, and we are just going to end this game at about 25 minutes here. Actually, this looks a little dicey. You know what? I'm actually not sure if we should even attempt it as the blue team here. Skirmishes are still happening. This could go any one way, but yes. The Nexus, which is the structure that has to be defeated, the Nexus will go down and will stay safe for now. And so it is still an ongoing game, but it definitely is the blue team's game to lose. Now Azir, he did teleport here and he is preparing to move in from a flank. Flank means the side of the enemy, where the rear or the back is, well, the rear or the back of the enemy. Something that I figured I could maybe clarify just because to people that are new to gaming and maybe new to military tactics, this isn't necessarily known. I know that in Final Fantasy, for example, this appears to be a problem that actually quite a few players have, is that in that game, certain attacks have to be executed from the flank, for example, of an enemy. And, well, some people do not know what flank of an enemy means. Alright, so a little bit of a back and forth here. Red team definitely picking up a little bit of gold in their favor again and coming back pretty strong. So it's still kind of everyone's game or anyone's game to lose here. Definitely still favored for the blue team, but the gold values now definitely are very, very close. We see, if you avert your eyes from the middle of the screen and you start looking at the gold lead that you can see up right next to the scores, you will see 51.8k for the blue team and 52k for the red team. So very, very close gold values. Usually you talk about 10,000 gold being the magical number, where, well, one team is very, very strong ahead, as Azir's shields will protect him. And we also see the interaction here between these two items, where the crown gives Azir a shield, and then the Banshee's Veil is the shield that procs first. Then after that, the second shield gets blocked, and so he is able to block 2 hits right after each other, which is a very interesting thing. It's also important to note that abilities that don't hit and they don't deal damage will not proc or will not destroy the shields, and they will also not be mitigated by the shields of the crown and Banshee's Veil as well. If you get a little bit confused with the items, it's always a good idea to pop up the item in the wiki and just kind of have a look at what exactly is going on here. So just a little recommendation. Something that I did with a friend that I started out on is we played a little bit of memory using champion abilities, names, and the values on them. So, you know, just kind of try to get it right. All right, Azir is going to be walking into the middle of the map here again, into the mid lane, and he's going to be trying to pick up some of that farm. He's a little bit torn, as we can see, between attending the raid boss, which is the dragon, right? It's a cloud dragon, and picking up this insane gold value that is just sitting around in the middle of the map here, as he does pick it up, and he's going to pick up even more of that. I think generally if you're losing and the enemy team has Cloud Soul coming up, it is kind of okay to give that up if you can get some more gold during that. And you can see that the red team here has actually managed to gain a small little lead of money. So it is still a close game, and Azir has managed to build items that will give him quite a bit of damage now. He obviously already has the survivability, so we will see how exactly that does, as this game is still a potentially clutch situation, but Azir is untouched here and he's starting to deal a lot of damage. Now, he could already be dealing that damage a little bit earlier had he built more aggressive items, but now everything comes together, giving him a lot of safety and deterring the enemy team from engaging onto him with those barriers, keeping him healthy and alive, and now his damage items also are coming through, allowing him to deal a lot of damage. Now Azir is one of these champions that does incredibly good at killing these raid boss type objectives. Objectives just being like things of interest that your team wants to tackle, usually kill with multiple people. So those are the enemy turrets, obviously the enemy nexuses, and also the enemy or the neutral raid bosses that will be taken down, and they will give you a buff. A buff is basically just an enhancement that is team-wide most of the time. And he will be picking up Rabadons. Now Rabadons is a really, really strong item. It gives you the most damage. However, it is an item that doesn't really give you a lot of value if it is picked up as a second item or even a third item. So usually the best way to deal with that is to build a Void Staff and then the Rabadons. So as we see here, we picked up 2 very defensive items, and then we picked up the Void Staff and the Rabadons, granting him a lot of, actually an incredible amount of damage, still with a lot of safety. Now what he did here is he summoned his turret. It gives him the ability to revive a turret, or at least shards of it, and he will gain something that deals a little bit of damage, gives him some safety, and gives him something which you could call an anchor to fall back to, right? As a team fight is unfolding here, but they will be able to take down the enemy team, and it is very, very much turning into the red team's favor here, the game. But it is a little bit of a back and forth, and it looks like the blue team is going to come back, and a miracle move here, beautifully done by the Singed player, the top laner, absolutely carries this situation. And just like that, the gold lead has been throwing back, and this is an absolutely crazy match of League of Legends. It was worth it to cast. I was, when they were about to finish the game, the blue team that is, I was already thinking about just being like, okay, yeah, probably won't use this cast, but it seems like it is quite the valuable cast, and especially for a little bit of, how should I say, a little bit of guidance of what is important in this game. So we will be talking about kills and how little kills can mean if you don't hit your CS numbers. And you saw that the enemy team, they had quite a few kills advantage over the red team, yet they still didn't have a huge gold lead over them. And so, you know, something to be keeping in mind as you play the game is, yeah, you can look at gold, you can look at kills that an enemy has, but you also have to look at how much CS they have, what the farm numbers are, right? And as the average, let's say, the average gold that you get for a CS, for a creep score, would be about 20. That basically means that obviously 10 CS difference can already be half a kill worth of gold, right? And so 20 CS is a kill. Obviously there is a little bit of variance, as the frontline minions, they give you 21, the backlines give you 14, and then some others give you 70, which is actually going up with the game. As we have another fight going in, beautiful catch here on to the jungler and the mid laner, as the jungler of the enemy team is going to go down to Azir. And so now we have a substantial lead here for the blue team. Azir is going to be recalling, but this doesn't really mean a lot, because the raid boss called Baron isn't yet available. 2 minutes until that comes back, and if you look at the timers, that means that the full enemy team will be back. However, the dragon is coming up fairly soon, and so that is definitely something that could be considered to be a slight advantage here for the red team. But generally, the pickups that they got here were mere gold pickups and not really much else, as no objectives will go their way. Little bit of a difficult state to be in. This can be one of the more taxing League of Legends games where it's a back and forth. For me, also the most enjoyable game, where kind of everyone is pulling their weight. So obviously some more than some others, but that's obviously that will always happen. But everyone's kind of pulling their weight, and it is just a back and forth, and the enemy team is playing respectably and your team is playing respectably, and both of you can improve on some things. Those usually are the most enjoyable games of League of Legends. That is what I love playing this game for. And so we definitely have one of those games on hand here, as Azir is going to be summoning again that turret. Little bit of a misplay by the red team's AD carry, but it seems that she shall be saved by the Azir and by her team. And this is a takedown on everything. Beautifully done here by the Azir, coming in very, very strong after having a quite weak middle of the game. He comes into his true form here in the late game, and he says, give me that W. I deserve it. And as his team pulled weight as well, he does an absolutely amazing job at winning this game. And thank you very much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye. And stay awesome.